Part of the upcoming challenge on set operations will be using a task class. This is a fairly simple class with multiple attributes, some with enums. This will be very similar to the contact data setup video I did earlier, which produced lists. In this case, I'll be getting different sets of tasks, and instead of using scanner to pass text block strings, I'll use methods on string. I'm also going to implement comparable on task. If you feel you need more experience working with comparable or enums, then this is a good opportunity to do it. If you just want to concentrate on the set operations part of the challenge, you can skip this setup video and download these classes from the next video's resources. You'll need to create a class that represents a task. It should have an assignee, a project name, a task description, a status assigned in progress or not yet assigned, and a priority, high, low, or medium. Each of these attributes should be editable. A task is uniquely identified by its project name and description. The task should implement comparable so that tasks are sorted by project name and description. The task data class will be used to set up and return some test data. If you want to use my data, it can be found in a CSV file in the resources section of this video and consists of the following: all tasks identified by the manager, tasks identified by Anne that she's working on or plans to work on, tasks which Bob says have been assigned to him, tasks Carol is doing as reported by herself. This class should have a getTasks method that returns a set of tasks. This method should take a string, either the name of one of the employees to get a specific set, or all to get the full task set. Okay, so it's time for you to give that a try on your own if you want some more practice. If you get stuck or you are done and want to see how I have implemented this, then come back and I'll walk you through my solution. Pause the video now. Welcome back. How'd you do? Did you manage to create a task class as well as a task data class that returns 4 different sets of data? I've created a new project called Set Operations Challenge for this video. Before I do anything with that, I'll start by creating a task class. I'm going to include 2 enums in this source file. Remember that I can do this as long as I don't make them public. I'll call the first enum priority, and its constants will be high, medium, and low in that order. My second enum is status, and that's going to have in queue, which will be the default status of any new task. I'll also include assigned and in progress. Right now I'm not going to worry about other statuses, like completed. I've said I want 5 fields on this task class and they'll all be private. The first 3 are strings, and the first of those I'm going to call project. Each task will belong to some project. Next, description, which describes a unit of work. Then the assignee or the employee completing the task. Priority, with my priority enum type for that, so this could be low, medium, or high. Status will be the type status, my other enum type. I'll generate some constructors. The first will have all 5 fields. The second constructor will have all fields except status. I'm going to remove all the statements in this generated constructor. I want to replace all that by chaining a call to the 5-argument constructor. I'll simply pass along the arguments for the first 4. For the status, if the assignee is null, I'll say it's in queue, otherwise it's assigned. I'll create another constructor, my third, and for this one I want the fields, project, description, and priority. Again, I'll remove the generated statements. I'll chain a constructor call here as well, this time to the 4-argument constructor, passing null as the third argument to that, which is the assignee. That chained constructor will in turn set the status to in queue, because the assignee is null. I'll generate getters and setters for all 5 fields, because I may want to use the getters as field references for other sorting mechanisms from outside of this class. You can also imagine task fields changing quite a bit over time, so you would probably want a way to set data on a task. I'll also generate a toString method. I'm going to replace that generated code, returning a formatted string instead, with all 5 fields passed as parameters. I'll print project first, then description, followed by priority. Finally, the assignee and the status. I said I wanted my tasks to be unique by project and description. This means I want to generate the equals and hash code methods using only those 2 fields, so I'll need to deselect all other fields on the first pop-up. I want to select them on the last pop-up because they should never be null. Finally, I want to implement comparable on this class, so I'll scroll up to the task declaration and include implements comparable. I should always specify a type argument when I implement comparable, and here it should be task, the current class. I've got an error because I haven't yet implemented the abstract method on comparable. I'll use IntelliJ's help to do that. That gives me the default implementation, which just returns 0. Here I want to compare two fields on this class. I'll start by creating a local variable int result and assign that the comparison of the project fields on this and on the argument passed. If the result is 0, the project names are the same. In that case, I want to then sort by the task description. I'll assign result to be the comparison of the description fields on these objects, and I'll return the result. That finishes the code for the task class at this point. Setting up all these methods manually can be quite tedious, so thank goodness for IntelliJ's tools here that help us with this boilerplate code. Now that I've got the task class, I want to load up some data into task and put them in sets. I'll do this with a task data class, so I'll create that. I'll set up an empty text block, private and static, on this class called tasks. I'm going to paste some data in here shortly. First, I want to copy that empty text block and paste it, renaming it ANSTasks. I'll paste that again and name this one Bob's Tasks. And one more time, pasting that and renaming it to Carol's Tasks. I'm going to use the data from the CSV file attached to this video and paste all tasks in the first text block. I'll repeat that process for ANSTasks. Next, I'll copy and paste Bob's tasks. Finally, I'll repeat that for Carol's tasks. Anytime you get data from anywhere, you should spend a few minutes getting familiar with it. Notice that this data comes in two different ways. For the full task list, there are 3 comma delimited fields. The first is project, and it appears the list is sorted by this field. The second field is description or task description. The third is a priority, obviously in text, meaning we have to get this text to match our priority enum values when we load the data. Scrolling down to look at Ann's and Bob's data, you can see there's a fourth field, a status, and that's in mixed case. I'll have to transform that string into the enum type we've got for status. Also, there's no assignee field in this data. That's going to have to be derived by the field itself. In other words, Ann's tasks will need to default Ann as the assignee, Bob's tasks to Bob, and Carol's tasks to Carol. Now that we've got an understanding of this data, I want to create the getTasks method. It's going to be public and static, so users can call it by qualifying the class name taskData. It's going to return a set of tasks, and it's going to take a string, the owner or assignee. I'll set up a local variable. That's the variable that will get returned from this method, so it's declared as a set of tasks, but it's going to be a hash set instance. You'll need to create a class that represents a task. Since I have a limited set of users, I'll just list their names in a comma delimited string and use the contains method to determine if the name passed, ignoring case, is one of those names. If it is, I'll use the method argument as the user or the assigned person, otherwise I'll set that to null. I want to return my local variable at the end of this method. Of course, I'm not done with this method. There's a bit more work to do. I need to figure out which text block to use, and that's again determined by the method argument, the owner. This time I'll switch on owner, converted to lowercase. If Ann was passed, I'll set selected list to Ann's tasks. If it was Bob, I'll pass back Bob's tasks. If Carol, then it's Carol's tasks. Otherwise, I'll pass back the full task list, so just tasks. Now that I've got the right data based on the owner, meaning I have the text block I want to process, I need to split each text block by lines. I did this in an earlier example using a scanner instance and its next line method. Here I'm simply going to use the split method on string and pass it the escape sequence for a new line \n. In a future video I'll show you another way to do this with \r, but I want to cover various ways, so I'll use \n here. which is a common way you might see when you're looking at other people's code. I'm going to loop through every line, which I get from this split method. After I have the line, I want to split by commas to get the field data. I'll trim every field's data using replace all, which you've seen me do before. Okay, so I've got all my data in an array. Before I can create an instance of a task, I want to transform status, which you'll hopefully remember was in the 4th position in a record that had a status. If there's less than 3 fields, I'll default the status to InQueue. Otherwise, I will pass the value of the status data field to the status enums value of method. I want to make the string passed all uppercase and replace spaces with underscores. Getting the priority enum constant is similar, but a little simpler. All records should have this field, and I just want it to be uppercase. Now I can create the task, passing it the first field, project, the second field, description, the user variable, and my priority and status variables, which are now both enum constants. I'm creating the task and adding it to the task list set at the same time. There's a lot of things that could go wrong with this method, but again I'm just keeping it simple here for the sake of time. To make it more robust, you'd want to check the data for nulls and empty strings or lines that don't have enough data, and so on. With this code, we can get data from our source with a parameterized call of a static method on this class. Getting back to the main class, I'm going to add a method that will sort and print tasks. I'll make this private and static and call it sort and print. It will take a header or description of the collection, a collection containing tasks, and a comparator I'm calling sorter. I will set up a 90 dashes separator line as a variable. I'll print my 90 dashes, followed by the header, followed by another string of dashes. To sort, I'd need to use a sortable set, which I haven't covered yet, so I'm going to set up an array list here and pass it the collection, the method argument. I can call sort directly on an array list and pass it the sorter, the comparator passed to this method. And I'll just print out each element of the sorted list. I also want to add an overloaded version of this method that doesn't take a comparator. I'll insert this above the first method on line 14. I'll chain a call to the sort and print method below, but pass null as the comparator, which is the last argument. Remember, I made the task comparable, so if I call list.sort with a null, and the list has elements that implement comparable, it will get sorted using comparable's compare_to method. I'll create a set named tasks, and call getTasks on task data, passing all as the owner. I'll invoke my sort and print method with a header, passing it tasks. Okay, so I can run this and see the full task list sorted by my comparable sort, project first, then description. I'll copy and paste those 2 lines of code. I'll change tasks to Ann's tasks and all to Ann on the first statement. I'll change the header to Ann's tasks, and I want to again change tasks to Ann's tasks on the second statement, if I run that. I'll now get Ann's tasks printed out. For good measure, I'll change the way I want this sorted. I'll add a local variable on line 12, a comparator with type argument task. I'll call it sort by priority. I'll assign it the result of calling comparing on comparator with the method reference task : get priority. I want to change the call to sort and print on that last statement, where I print Ann's tasks and include sort by priority as an additional argument. Rerunning the code now. I get Ann's tasks sorted by priority there, with the highest priority tasks listed first. If I had set up my enum to go from low to high, instead of high to low, these would have been sorted in reverse. Okay, so these are the classes that you'll need to complete the set operations challenge, which is coming up next. I will see you in that next video.